What's up, everyone? Tony here, and today we're going to be discussing the mysterious death of Natalie Wood. Now, I personally remember seeing her for the first time when I was a kid. My mother used to love the movie Splendor in the Grass with her and a young Warren Beatty. Soon after that, I would see Miracle on 34th Street. I would see Rebel Without a Cause. As I got older, I would find out that she also met a tragic ending as well. That's what we're going to be discussing today. So with all that said, let's get started.
The death of Natalie Wood rocked Hollywood. What happened that night on the yacht, with cinematic royalty implicated, a supposedly botched autopsy, and hushed rumors flying through the hills of affairs and murder? Natalie Wood, born Natalia Zakharenko on July 20, 1938, rose to stardom at a young age. Natalie's mother, Maria, encouraged her daughter to pursue a career in show business after a fortune teller predicted that her second child would be a celebrity. Natalie was 4 years old when her family relocated to Santa Rosa, a prominent filming city for Hollywood films, and she was promptly cast as an extra in Happy Land. Her family relocated to Los Angeles in 1944 to be closer to the film industry, and she signed with International Pictures, where she changed her name to Natalie Wood. 2 years later, she earned her big break in Miracle on 34th Street, co-starring with Maureen O'Hara. Maria was a theater mother who pushed her child to take on roles and activities. Natalie Wood, the complete biography by Suzanne Finstad recounts Natalie's childhood stories. The abuse and drunkenness in her family, being forced to turn down a proposal from her high school sweetheart, who later attempted suicide. Over the next 8 years, Natalie appeared in 20 films, often filming two simultaneously. Despite being a teenager, she regularly worked under her Warner Brothers contract. Natalie's life was hardly spectacular, and her circumstances would only worsen as she grew older. Natalie was 17 when she landed her big break in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. It was her first adult film, and she had to work hard to get the part. She needed to show the director, Nicholas Ray, that she could play a rebel, which led to her having sexual relations with a man who was 25 years her senior. She was later nominated for an Academy Award for her performance. In an interview with the New York Times, Natalie's sister, Lana, revealed that their mother never reported the sexual assaults and pushed them under the rug. A year later, the 18-year-old was introduced to Robert Wagner through other actors and sent on a date by Warner Brothers. Robert, born in 1930 in Detroit, Michigan, became interested in acting after graduating high school. He caddied for Clark Gable and other famous people and understood that acting was what he wanted to do. When he was 19, he had an uncredited role in The Happy Years and was signed to Henry Wilson at the 20th Century Fox studio. From there, his career took off, and in 1952, he starred in With a Song in My Heart, What Price Glory, and Stars and Stripes Forever. In 1954 and 1955, he co-starred with Spencer Tracy in Broken Lance and Jeffrey Hunter in the classic western White Feather. Robert and the studio made a calculated decision to have him photographed with Natalie Wood. Her fame as a gorgeous and famous actress was growing, which could only benefit his struggling career. The pair married a year later, on December 28, 1957, in Scottsdale, Arizona, but their happiness would not endure. They were the sexiest pair in Hollywood and couldn't go anywhere without being followed by admirers and the press. Natalie's career was still on the rise, with a slew of hit films on her resume, whereas Robert's was beginning to slow significantly, despite his youth. Natalie featured in Splendor in the Grass with Warren Beatty in 1961, and the rumor mill began to crank. The press's repeated assertions that the couple was having an affair weakened the marriage. The ultimate blow came when Natalie discovered her husband was with someone else at their house. Natalie never refuted the accusations, preferring to focus on her purported romance rather than the truth about her husband's adulterous affair. The couple announced their separation in a joint press release in June 1961 and divorced in April 1962. Both went on to remarry. A year later, Robert married Marion Marshall, with whom he had a daughter, Katie. Natalie had a daughter, Natasha, with British producer Richard Gregson. Natalie and Robert's marriages ended when they ran into one another at a party years later. Recognizing that the years apart had caused them to mature as persons while maintaining their affection for one another, they rekindled their relationship. A few months later, on July 16, 1972, off the shore of Malibu, the couple remarried, with Natalie informing her sister Lana, "Sometimes the devil you know is better than the one you don't." Natalie stepped away from Hollywood after the birth of their daughter Courtney in 1974 to raise their children. Robert's career was on the rise once more, and he earned the role of Jonathan Hart in Heart to Heart, a 5-year run alongside Stephanie Powers. Natalie returned to the movies in 1981 after raising their children for several years. She began with the sci-fi film Brainstorm, in which she co-starred with Christopher Walken, and this is where the story begins. Natalie and Robert intended to spend the weekend on Catalina Island aboard their yacht, Splendor, which had been locked down for the Thanksgiving holiday. They invited Walken to join them, and he accepted. The 60-foot yacht could comfortably accommodate all of them. The boat, purchased by Robert in 1974 and skippered by Dennis Davern, was anchored away from the port owing to a busy weekend on Catalina. On Saturday night, Wood, Wagner, Walken, and Davern dined at Doug's Harbor Reef, an island restaurant. The group ate, drank, and joked all evening, and by the time they got up to leave, they were so drunk that restaurant manager Don Whiting requested a harbor patrol boat to ensure they returned safely to Splendor. The harbor master, Doug Udon, received a call from the yacht requesting assistance at 1:30 a.m. the following day. Natalie was missing, as was a dinghy from the side of the boat. Doug swiftly organized a search party to find Natalie and the bark, as the Coast Guard was still several hours away. Don Whiting assisted in the search by using his boat. Bad weather and clouds made it difficult to see too far into the distance. Don Whiting eventually came across the dinghy hours later, but Natalie was nowhere to be found. Doug Udon told Robert of the discovery, and he was concerned. He told Doug that Natalie was terrified of water, which she had spoken about in an interview with Hollywood columnist Shirley Etter. Natalie didn't swim and had many terrifying experiences during her film career, ensuring a lifelong phobia of water. Doug Bombard was the one to find Natalie. The business owner enlisted to help with the search saw her red down jacket bobbing in the water, with Natalie's lifeless body still inside. Her hair was floating out. She was hanging in the jacket. After being told the devastating news that his wife had been found, Robert Wagner was asked to identify her body. Instead of going himself, he asked Captain Dennis Davern to identify her. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department opened a case into Natalie's death, and Detective Dwayne Razier was put in charge of the investigation. He began by interviewing the 3 men on board the yacht. When they returned from dinner, Robert told him that the movie stars continued drinking into the night. He said they sat in the salon when Natalie left and returned to their bedroom. Robert went to check on his wife and discovered that she had vanished, as had the dinghy. Christopher Walken gave the same account when questioned by the detective. When Razier spoke to Dennis Davern, he realized the timeline was wrong in the 3 men's stories. If what they were saying was true, Natalie had been missing over an hour before the call for help came through to the harbor. Robert told Razier that he didn't want to alert anyone to his wife's disappearance because he wanted it kept out of the press to save them embarrassment. Instead, what he inadvertently did was prolong her rescue, potentially saving her life. Detective Razier traveled to Catalina Island to examine the yacht and the potential crime scene. When he arrived, he noted the broken bottle in the salon, and the clothes were strewn across the bedroom that Natalie and Robert were using. The room was a mess, but there was little to go on without evidence of foul play. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, the chief medical examiner coroner in Los Angeles County, was renowned as the coroner to the stars, having performed autopsies on Sharon Tate, Marilyn Monroe, and Robert F. Kennedy, among others. Natalie was discovered dressed in a nightgown, knee socks, and a red down jacket. Noguchi noticed significant bruising on her body, especially her face. Her blood alcohol level was 0.14, indicating that she was drunk when she went overboard. Following the autopsy, Noguchi held a press conference to explain his findings. He told the gathered press that Natalie had most likely slipped while attempting to board the dinghy and fallen into the water. She couldn't get into the dinghy or back aboard the boat because of the weight of her jacket. According to him, Natalie Wood died from accidental drowning, and there was no evidence of foul play. After this revelation, the journalists present at the news conference questioned Noguchi, with one asking why he felt Natalie had left the boat at such a late hour, in her intoxicated state, and her nightwear. Noguchi leaked to the press that night about a disagreement between Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken. He assumed Natalie was furious and wanted to leave the fight. Instead of emphasizing the unintentional fatality, the news focused on the alcohol-fueled brawl. Rumors of a love triangle involving the 3 movie stars had circulated in the press, prompting Detective Razier to re-interview the 3 men later that month. When he inquired about the disagreement, Christopher Walken revealed that he and Robert had disagreed about Natalie's career. In the HBO documentary Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind, Robert recalls telling Walken, "I think you must stay out of our life." Natalie's case was closed in less than 2 weeks. Dennis Davern reached Natalie's sister, Lana, 10 years later. According to the sister, Dennis revealed that Robert, Natalie, and Christopher had a huge quarrel. He explained to his sister that the argument arose because Natalie and Christopher were flirting with each other, which made Robert jealous and irritated. According to Dennis, Natalie went inside the bedroom she shared with Robert, and he followed her. He claimed a physical altercation occurred, with furniture tossed around the cabin. When Dennis knocked on the door to check on the couple, Robert opened it a little, told the captain everything was great and shut it. After checking on the couple, Dennis walked up onto the deck and discovered Robert. He said, "She's gone," when asked where Natalie was. Dennis noticed Natalie in the water and attempted to save her, but Robert urged him to leave her alone and that she needed to be taught a lesson. Robert called for assistance an hour later. Dennis was sweating the next time he saw him, and the dingy had vanished. Dennis Davern co-wrote the book Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor with Marty Ruye in 2009, in which he recounted what transpired that fatal night. When Natalie's death was discovered, he was chastised by the press for not telling the police the whole story. He stated that he and Robert discussed what they should say and that he was only an employee. He was terrified. Dennis was interviewed on Today in 2011, 30 years after Natalie's death, and told David Gregory, "We didn't take any steps to see if we could locate her. I believe it was a case of saying, we're not going to look too hard, we're not going to put on the searchlight, and we're not going to inform anyone right now." Another witness came forward a few days after Natalie's body was discovered. That night, a woman on a neighboring boat with her boyfriend and son heard someone in the sea yelling for help. She informed authorities that the cries went on for 20 minutes and that she heard a male voice answer them. The police did not interrogate the witness before closing the investigation. Natalie's case was revived in 2011, according to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. This was mainly due to a Vanity Fair article by Sam Kashner in 2000, in which he discussed several portions of the case that didn't make sense. Another coroner looked over Noguchi's autopsy report on Natalie to see if they reached the same conclusion: Natalie Wood's death was an accident. Noguchi claimed that Natalie's bruises were caused by falling overboard into the ocean, although other markings on her body weren't consistent with a fall. The new chief medical examiner found insufficient evidence to provide their sought answers. However, according to Suzanne Finstad's book, other witnesses were present during the first autopsy. Dr. Michael Franco was an intern when Natalie was brought into the Los Angeles coroner's office in 1981. He said that the markings on her body were from being forced off a boat, not from trying to get back on. He added that when he told Dr. Noguchi what he knew from the bruise patterns, Noguchi allegedly answered with, "Some things are best left unsaid." Natalie's death certificate was altered from accidental death to drowning and other unidentified reasons after the 2011 review, and the matter was closed. In 2018, detectives discovered another witness who saw two people on the Splendor's aft deck, correlating with Dennis Davern's story. Robert Wagner's status in the case was quickly changed to person of interest. Family members, the press, and new and old investigators are still investigating Natalie's death. Dr. Thomas Noguchi wrote about his experience as a witness in Natalie Wood's case in his book, Coroner. He even raised his own questions. Wasn't it unusual that the two guys aboard the yacht didn't even realize she had left the boat? Had she not spoken to them? Why had she crept out to the yacht's stern in the night, climbed a ladder, and untied the dinghy? What was she up to? What was her destination? How come? Pieces of My Heart, Robert Wagner's authorized biography, disputed accusations that Natalie's death was not an accident and continues to hold this stance to this day. Robert gave numerous interviews about that fatal night in 1981, but he has always provided the same answers: Natalie's death was an accident, and he did not murder her. Natalie's daughter, Natasha Gregson Wagner, produced the HBO documentary Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind This Year, which included interviews with celebrities such as Mia Farrow and Robert Redford. The New Yorker, on the other hand, feels the film's objective is to clear Robert of his collaboration. Since 1981, Robert Wager has not spoken to the police. Christopher Walken has said very little about Natalie Wood's death throughout the years. However, a private source told Suzanne Finstad that Walken heard Natalie and Robert dispute and suspected Robert pushed Natalie overboard. Lana Wood, Natalie's sister, authored Natalie Wood, a memoir by her sister, a book about Natalie's life that chronicles their lives growing up, their mother's passion for ensuring her daughters became cinematic stars, and her thoughts on Natalie's loves and marriages. Natalie's cause of death is still unknown, leaving many questions unanswered. Will we ever get the truth behind this story? While independent authors continue to write about these unresolved mysteries, this real-life whodunit may finally end, but history may not be rewritten.